Three, two, one, action.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jeff,
I'm Elisa.
and we are Mr. and Mrs. RN. Thank you again for joining us. We are super excited about today's episode. As you know, our podcast is about faith, family, and nursing, and today is going to be our first episode on faith, and our faith specifically. And so it's actually pretty special, pretty personal to us. So we are taking the step forward in our vulnerability to share with you all, times where, God has shown up for us, in the hopes not just to share our story, but again, as we had said in the past, we would like to work on inspiration and providing hope and really just talking to you out there, because I know like myself, or not on us, we need a lot of faith. We need to pour into our faith. We need to work on our faith. So for those of you out there who are struggling, we hope that our stories can help with that, and can inspire some hope and connect you to your faith as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think to aspiring nurses too, to hear the story of how you came into nursing and how faith really was at the intersection of that. I know we've spoken to a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I've always wanted to be a nurse," and it's never too late. And I don't think you'll ever have the perfect situation either. It doesn't really always line up for what it is that you want to do. I don't think it ever really lines up. Certainly,
No.
It didn't line up for you.
No, certainly did not. And those of you asking, like, why are we talking about faith in this podcast when it's about nursing, and I don't understand this? Well, let me remind you, right? What is the nursing model, right? It's a biopsychosocial spiritual, right? So in nursing, the spiritual aspect is important for healing, it's important for health as well. So that's why for us, as nurses, we do strongly believe that faith is an important component in the nursing profession. I have seen numerous nurses bring their faith into their practice, whether it's through prayer, whether it's through reading the word, whether it's through sharing, whether, in many different ways, and it's of different faiths as well. It doesn't have to be of the one faith, but we have seen how that faith and nursing has intersected numerous times. So we wanted to take this opportunity to share, again, a couple of times in our lives that have been very pivotal to where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the first one that we're going to talk about?
I think we're gonna talk about how the experience of going to nursing school in Philadelphia.
Yes. Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Well, I'll be the first one to be honest, right?
Well, it is your story.
It is my story, so I will tell you the truth. The truth is that I never intended to go into the profession of nursing.
Right. We have talked about that before too.
I did, and I joked about it. But yes, the truth is that I had never saw myself as a nurse. As a matter of fact, I had actually applied to a different profession 20 different times, 20 different programs, and had been denied.
I think that's, we could pause there, right? Like, that was a really big rejection, right?
Well, it was a really big rejection, but when I think about it now, I don't see it more about a rejection. I see it more as a redirection.
Well, how did you feel at the time? I don't think
Angry.
you felt. I don't think you felt redirected.
No, I felt at that time I was working in EMS, and at that time I was really burnt out in that field, and I just wanted out. I wanted out. I had finished my bachelor's that was not in healthcare. And so my thought process was, well, then it's the natural progression. I might as well go get a master's and then start a field in that, and it'll be fine. It's 2 years. What can go wrong? It'll be quick. But my need for control and my desire for like wanting what I wanted, how I wanted it, as much as it all on paper looked great, I was rejected from 20 programs that I applied to, and I just couldn't comprehend why? It was interesting because even one of them, I remember I worked a double shift. It was like 2 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I had my interview at 8:30 in the morning. And I got out of work around 7. I showered. I got ready. I went to my interview, and I said, yeah, this is, I really want to enter this profession. I really think that my experience in healthcare has led me to this. And they said, what experience in healthcare? And I was like, well, my EMS background, I worked EMS and responded to 911 jobs and provide care in the field. They're like, that doesn't count. And I was like at 2 in the morning, I had a cardiac arrest that I just worked up for 2 hours. What do you mean it doesn't count? The guy came back. Like, it counts. It counts for everything, And I said, no, I'm sorry, I don't think you understand me. And I tried to explain what EMS was and what I've done, and they weren't hearing it. And they said, I'm sorry, but have you considered nursing? Maybe you should be the nurse and then come back and apply to. I'm like, they just very dismissive, very door shut in my face. And so after that, I really felt angry. I felt frustrated. I felt disappointed. I felt hopeless. I really did.
Yeah. I think so. Reflecting on that now, like the closed doors and how they can somehow lead to a blessing. It doesn't really feel that way at that time, right? Especially when we're talking about career and success. At the time when you're not experiencing success, staying in faith, right? And saying like, this wasn't for me, but something else will be.
Yes. And that's what ended up happening to me in that sense. Obviously, at that point, I didn't know that. I didn't have the wisdom for that. I didn't have the mindset. I didn't have anything to comprehend that. I was like a little child, like like a baby who was like, no, I want candy now for breakfast. I don't understand what is the point. The candy's right there, and I want to eat it. I need it. I don't understand. Like, it's right there. Why can't I have it? So I think that, at that point also, to be fully transparent and vulnerable, I was not in my faith either. I was not seeking my faith. I was not growing my faith. There's no spiritual walk at that time. And so, looking at it back now, I see how God directs our steps, And so when that happened, after a bout of frustration and depression and just general negativity, let's leave it at that. I remember that you had a conversation with our dentist, right? And he said, our dentist was amazing. Dr. Lee, amazing dentist in the Bronx, fantastic guy, great guy. And I think he told you about Philadelphia. He says, you guys should go to Philadelphia because it's a great place. He went to University of Pennsylvania. He went to UPenn. He said, oh, it's the best time of my life. I love Philly. Great, great, great. And
he said it's a great place for young people like you.
Yes, he said that. And then, and remember what he had in his office? He was a Christian dentist, because before you enter his office, there was a sign.
There was a psalm there. It says, "Open your mouth and I will fill it." I think that's a psalm that he had up there.
And I didn't know what a psalm was at that time. I was like, "That's a weird way for a dentist to promote his business," It's like, that's just weird. But it was a psalm, right? It was a beautiful psalm.
It was a psalm.
And so he tells you about Philly. And at that time, I'm like, I've applied to 20 different states, including South Dakota.
Yeah.
And everyone has said no. And then I remember that the following day, you had one of your...
I had an email. And the email had an open house for the school I'd never heard of, Thomas Jefferson University. And I was like, oh, I think I was off that day already. And I think you were off that day already. So the stars aligned.
Yeah.
And the dentist had told me that, and I really felt like God was speaking to me through the dentist, through the email, just showing me the signs that this was for you. And I was really excited because I was like, I know I'm hearing from God, and that's amazing, right? So I was like, we have to go. It's going to be so great. I mean, we're not enthusiastic about it.
So I've never left New York City, south of the Six Flags in New Jersey. Like I've never left other than going to school in Germany. In New York, I never went to another state. Like to this day, I've never gone to Florida. I've never gone to like other states. Like so, I was never the one to like leave New York and go here, there, and
You're not
everywhere.
like a road trip person.
Yeah, I never. No, that's never been something I'm like. I really want to hit the road. Like
Really? Why not though?
because I lived in New York and everything was there, so I felt like there was no need to leave.
But there's a whole 50 other states.
I'm bad at geography. That's the first thing.
And Canada.
I'm
We
bad
can
at that.
drive
too.
there too.
I know this. I'm just saying that I didn't really see the need for it.
But I think it's so interesting because you're still like quite an explorer. Like you
Yes.
like new things.
I like new things, so I would explore new things in Brooklyn, new things in the Bronx, new things
Not
in
even in
Queens.
Brooklyn. You were not going to Brooklyn.
I was not going to Brooklyn. I'm not gonna lie. I would stay in Queens. I didn't even know she lived in the Bronx until like
Queens and the Bronx. Actually, probably for you, Queens
And
and
Manhattan.
Manhattan
That's it.
was about it for you.
that's it. Because
And maybe a little bit of Long Island. A little Strong Island there.
just a little bit. Mostly Queens and Manhattan. But other than that,
Although I mean, between Queens and Manhattan, you have probably about like 10 million people, right?
it's not that much.
At least a couple million people.
Couple million. But I never felt the need to leave. So I
But
remember you
that's so
had
strange,
that.
though. So
That's
strange
not-
because it's almost like a paradox. It's like I want to try new things, but count me out of going to Connecticut. And forget about Vermont. I don't know, where is it?
I was like, if I wanted a pizza and syrup, there's a Whole Foods on the block. Like I didn't want to. There was no need for me to go to Vermont. But you should go. It's beautiful out
I
here.
would love to go to Vermont.
I would love to go to Vermont now.
I go see Bernie Sanders with his
Mittens.
mittens.
Okay, no, but coming back to
No,
this,
no.
you had the magazine. It said about Thomas Jefferson University. You tell me about it.
No, it was an email.
It was an email, and then
Which
I was
like in the junk, you know what I mean? It wasn't like in the forefront of the email.
and you said, yeah, we should go. I'm like, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm definitely not going. Are you crazy? I was like, I don't want to be a nurse. That's not for me. This is pointless. Why would I have another bachelor's? Like, how many bachelors does a person need? Like, I didn't want to have 2 bachelors. I just didn't see the purpose.
Yeah, but I think, there's such a thing about going to see something,
Yes.
and going by faith.
Yeah,
see
it was
something,
definitely.
Because I think I think at that point, really, we never really explored all the financial implications
Nope.
or had everything spelled out regarding student loans or even had really information regarding that.
Yeah.
And it was really a faith moment. It was really like, I think God wants you to go to that school. I'd personally never been to Philadelphia either. I'd been to Pennsylvania, but Philadelphia is a city. So I echoed his hesitancy because I was like, I really don't know, but I do know that there's nothing here for you where we currently were.
Yeah.
So I was like, I know that we need to go out and just see what's different. And I feel like this particular place God is calling us to. And then when we got there, the best thing happened.
Well, actually, let's stop there. Before we got there,
Okay.
because I want to be honest, right? So let's be honest. So before we got there, I was okay until exit 7 of the New Jersey Turnpike, because
Right.
that's where the Six Flags is. So I was perfectly fine. I was like, oh, I know where I'm at. This is okay. We passed Six Flags, and I went berserk. I was like, what are we doing? Like, we don't know where we're going. In my head, all those 80s horror flicks of being in a
zombies were gonna
being
come
in
out
a
and get us.
field and being lost in a field and fields of corn and children, and I just freaked out, and I was like, no.
He said something about the children of the corn coming
Right,
out.
yeah. I got
I-
really freaked
I don't watch horror movies, so he had this.
She thought it was a restaurant. She thought I was like, oh, that sounds yummy. We should try it. And I was like, no, that's not where you eat. I was like, that's where you die.
What could be so possibly bad about this? And the terror and the fear was on his face as I was driving past exit 4.
And I said, no, this is wrong. This is wrong on so many levels. I don't want to go. We don't belong here. We need to go back where we're safe. And we need to stay there and that's it. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. And you kept driving, which, kudos to you, because you were like, it was like exit 6, exit 5. I'm like, this has gone too far. And then I remember I told you, you know what? There better be, because at that time, again, you were very into your faith. I wasn't. So I said to you, there better be signs. There better be signs. These signs you speak of, there better be everywhere for me, because I haven't had a sign. I've never seen a sign. I've never received a sign. So they better be there, and I need to. It has to happen to me, not for you, but for me, because that's how I'll know that this is where I belong. And so we finally get into Philly, right?
Yeah.
And we passed.
And we park.
We passed the Benjamin Franklin, right? The bridge. And I remember we park, and the ambulances. So Thomas Jefferson University is an academic medical center. There's a hospital. I mean, they're wonderful. They're huge. And so an ambulance passes by, right? So EMS Jeff is like, oh, there's 911 here. And it says Jeff Stat. That's on the side, right? Jeff Stat. And just whoop, whoop, whoop. And I was like, oh, look at that. Jeff Stat. That's what's up. Okay.
And we thought it was like one,
No, there's...
And then we parked the car, and it started to look around the quad, which is beautiful. If any of you are around...
Walnut and 10th.
Yeah, in Philadelphia, check it out, because it's really beautiful there. So we park at the quad, which is right next to the nursing school, which was brand new.
Yeah,
right?
brand new.
They had just built it. And we look up at all the posters, right?
Wait, before the posters. Right.
Okay,
right.
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I'll listen. Go
this
ahead.
is my story.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
before the posters, there's a helicopter that lands on top of this hospital, right? And I'm hearing the chopper, I'm like, what is happening here? Like, there's no choppers in Manhattan, because there's a hospital every 2 blocks, so you don't need a helicopter. But the helicopter is landing on top of the hospital, bringing what I presume patients. And it said Jeff Stat, and I was like, look at that. I was like, my name is everywhere. And then as I'm walking around the quad, I see these I don't know, what are they called? Banners?
No, there's the advertisements, the big
no, there was numerous ones.
Billboards.
Numerous
Billboards.
yes, signs, right? And it at that time, I thought it said Jeff It, right? So I thought it was their slogan. I was like, just Jeff It, And I was like, oh, like, nobody knew Thomas Jefferson University as Thomas Jeff. It was called Jeff, That's how I was like, oh, it's Jeff It. So I thought that was the logo. I was like, look at that, just Jeff It. It turned out that later I learned that it's information technology, Jeff IT, which is a great program too. So for those of you out there who are interested in tech, Jeff It, just Jeff It, and then go to Jeff IT. But they had all the signs in the world were hitting me in my face left and right, And I remember you told me, you were like, you wanted a sign. Do you have enough of them? Because I was inundated with signs.
It said his name literally everywhere.
Everywhere.
And it could have said Jefferson, but it said Jeff everywhere.
Yes, it said Jeff everywhere. So that was pretty overwhelming, because I felt at ease. I felt a little more relaxed. Still apprehensive, though. Still not interested in this. Still not a positive, like, oh, this is great. I know, I told you I was going to be honest. So I remember the open house comes, and we start talking, and then this wonderful admissions counselor, to who this day I still say hello on LinkedIn, because I truly believe that God sent her to, like, just impact my life. She says to me, she does her spiel about the program, everything, and she says, I go up to her, I was like, listen, my first time around in college, I wasn't too hot in academics.
Well, like, tell the real story. You didn't want to talk to her either.
I didn't want to talk to her either.
I told you, I said, you need to You need to tell her your story.
Yes.
And you really didn't want to tell her
I
your
didn't.
story.
I didn't want to tell her because for those of you out there who are applying to these healthcare professions, whether it's medical school or nursing school or PA school or whatever healthcare profession, there is a system where you enter all your academic grades and it spits out a number, and this number is who you are.
The nursing CAS, right? I don't
The
know if
CAS. It's called the CAS
CAS,
system.
yeah.
CAS. So it's whatever. It's medical CAS, PA CAS, or whatever CAS. But this system is so that it can tab. It just. I didn't look so good in this system, and so that's where I was really
because of your first degree.
because of my first degree. I was in my grades and all. They weren't great. They weren't fantastic grades, and you
Because of
know.
some life circumstances too that I'm sure those of you out there that are listening to us was like, we're considering nursing. It's like, well, you know, I didn't do so great on my first degree.
Right.
That was kind of your story. Is that you really
I didn't do so good. I didn't do so great. Like I didn't do nothing. Like I there are circumstances in life where it's like you come from, a high school into a college setting. There's a transition in that life that I wasn't prepared for.
Mm-hmm.
I really wasn't. And so I didn't do so good.
But then, as an adult, when you went back, you were able to do really well in your prerequisite courses.
Well, of course, yeah. When after my first time
awesome.
around,
Yeah.
before nursing school, before all that stuff, I went to do my prereqs and I did great. I did fantastic on them. But your grades follow you. So regardless of how fantastic I did, in that 1 year I went back as a post-batch to do my prereqs, my actual bachelor's impacted everything. So suffice it to say that system put me in a bad light academically speaking, and I was really thinking this is going to affect me. I go in, I didn't want to speak to the admissions counselor because I thought that I was just going to be a number. But you did encourage me to speak to her.
I told you. I didn't encourage you. I told you. I said, go over there.
She
said, get
she
over
commanded
there.
me. She commanded me to speak to her. So I did.
Yeah.
I said to her, "Hey."
I'm not often like that though, right? Am I?
That's a different- that's
am
a-
I very
that's a-
prescriptive? Am I prescriptive?
That's a different episode.
Okay.
So so going back, so I talked to her and I said, "Hey, this is the situation. I didn't do so hot in my first time around, but I did go back, and as you can see, there's a big change. I'm concerned that y'all gonna make a decision on me based on my mistakes." I said, and I'm just not about that. And she said, "I'm only interested in working with students who I can feel like I want them to care for my grandma." And I was like, "Well, that's me." I was like, "I'll care for your grandma, my grandma, her grandma, anybody's grandma." I was like, "That's what I do. That's what I do in EMS. That's what I want."
Even in your personal life, you took care of your grandma.
That's what I said. I said, "I'll take care of my grandma." And I remember she was like, "Look, I keep track of the students who apply by the number of ways that they contact me." And I was like, "Contact you?" She's like, "Yeah, I mean, shoot me an email, call me, this is my number, and that way I remember your name." And I remember I told you, I'm just applying to one nursing school. I'm done with applying to like a blanket application.
I said, if God's gonna get me in, He'll get me into this one school.
I said, if God wants me to be a nurse, then I'm applying to the one. And then I applied to just one school. And I remember I would email this lady and I would contact this lady, and she's like, "Jeff, I know. Yes, I know. There's nothing new, Jeff. Nope. Yep. I still have your application. Yeah, we're still reviewing. Okay, great." I was like, "All right, fantastic. I'll give you a call tomorrow." She was like, "You don't need to." I was like, "No, I'll just say hello, And that's what I did for like the 2, 3, 4 weeks that it took after my application.
Yeah, it was a lot of persistence. And then then we had our wedding in Peru.
And that's right. We had our wedding.
You still didn't know that you got in.
I spent 2 months in Peru planning our wedding. And I at that time I had resigned from my EMS job, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So we were in South America, and I didn't really know what the next steps were. We had a beautiful wedding, fantastic party, but we didn't know what was going to happen when we came back to our reality. And
that was a really precarious time, I think.
Yeah.
It's that in between, right? Of when you have to go by faith to do something, and then you have to wait right? It's like, is this really gonna happen? And it was really hard for you.
It was
was it?
extremely hard because I at that time I was very controlling. I was like, no, like this is gonna happen at this time, and then when that happens, then I'm gonna do this, and then after that, like I had a whole plan, but my plans got derailed, and so I was so lost and so frazzled. But we came back right from Peru. We spent a month there together. I spent an extra month working the details for the wedding, and then after 2 months out of the country, we come back and I'm come back to the Bronx, and I'm like, all right, what do we do? You know? And I remember that week, I received the acceptance letter, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be a nurse. And I was like, okay, I can do this, you know? And but that was my journey into getting accepted into nursing school. So for those of you out there who are struggling with your own journey, either trying to get into a nursing program or trying to get into a nurse practitioner program, CRNA program, PhD program, whatever program you're trying to get in, persistence in faith, you know? And I can't help but know now that although I didn't have faith, God had faith in me. You know, God was faithful to me. And so I share this with you all for those of you out there who need to hear this, that, you know, you're not alone. You're not alone. You know, there's somebody out there praying for you. In this case, it was you. It was my mom. You know, I wasn't praying for myself. So faith is such a powerful thing that it's not dependent on you, as it wasn't dependent on me. You know, and so I wanted to share that with you because I think it's important, you know, to share how wonderful God is and how he comes through in times of our lives where we're frazzled. We don't know what else to do. We're done with, you know. But
they can rely on him. I think that's why this podcast is so interesting, because we decided to do it on faith, family, and nursing, and this story is really the intersection of that.
All of them. Yeah.
It was faith, and it was really the power of a praying wife, right?
Yeah, for sure.
For those of you out there that maybe your spouse is not a person of faith, right? That you can still stand in faith. And like he said, and there was not a really big change after that too with your
faith.
No,
I'm not gonna lie.
It wasn't until several years later that there was like more conversion that happened.
Yeah, more transformation. For sure,
yeah. And really like submission to the Lord that took place. So, you know, for those of you out there that are believing for family members and things like that to come to the Lord, you know, stand strong and see that God is going to move in their lives.
For sure.
And it may take continued persistence on your behalf. Because like I said, even though this major thing happened, it was so major.
It was life-changing.
It wasn't really till several years later that there was even more transformation that occurred. But nevertheless, you know, God is always coming after us too. And I think that's what this story shows, is that he was coming after you.
Absolutely, yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
And that even in your defiance of God, right? Like, you better show me a sign, right? Like, how dare you, no? Like, he did out of his great love for you, right?
It was like that story in the Bible with the guy with the sponge or something.
Sponge.
Yeah, the guy, remember he says, make it wet under the rock or make it wet under this rag.
Oh, the rag. No, the rag. Yeah. Then he was like, if you really want me to do this, then you'll is it Elisha or Elijah?
Elijah. I don't know. I'm not great.
He said like wet the rag.
Make it dry or make it
make
wet
everything around it. Oh, now we have to look that up. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good one.
And just similar to that, where I was like, you know what?
I need a sign.
I need a sign.
Yeah.
You know, and even then he didn't listen. I think
after that, it was like the third or the fourth time.
Yes,
he was like, "Can you do this?
Yes.
Can you do that? Can you do this? Can you do that?"
Right.
But that's how much God loves us, that he comes right into our situation and he will prove himself. So in that situation, we really saw Jeff everywhere, and really seeing the goodness of God in like print was amazing.
Yeah.
And it really, for me, it set me off to like a place of like, wow, like you could really experience this intersection. But even for me, and we had talked about this prior to our episode, that I don't think it really integrated in my career until recently.
Mhm.
The faith, family, and nursing, like having that as a whole. It was always very separate because that's like the way I was taught, right?
Right.
Is that like faith is in church, and then family is one thing, and then nursing is a whole other thing.
Right.
So not really this integrated space. So it didn't even happen for me back then either. So
That's interesting,
that was
yeah.
like a faith part for me. It really wasn't a career part, which is so interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
So that's my story, how I got into nursing school and how faith intersected with nursing and family in that particular time in my life. And it wasn't the only one. There's many.
Many.
But I wanted to share that particular one because I think that's, the beginning, right?
The beginning of this story.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? So tell me, let's, share with us a moment like that you saw, God work in you and.
I think it started for me at the very early beginning of my career, and it wasn't as stark, right? Like for you had this, I want to say it was like the fireworks moment, right? Like
Right.
God they gave you that fireworks, like I'm here, like hello. You asked for a sign, and here you go, Jeff. So that was pretty awesome. No, for me, it really took place in a prayer. I had some really bad things happen to me during nursing school that really put me in a really difficult place. And I always actually struggled with my attention. So like focusing to read, focusing to take tests, not taking tests per se, like my focus goes anywhere else during the test, but maybe studying and things like that. And I really didn't study too much for my NCLEX. I gotta say that, because of some life circumstances that took place that was really difficult. My parents were getting divorced while I was in nursing school.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really difficult. And I also had some personal challenges as well. So when I sat down to take the NCLEX the first time, I had a permit and not a actual driver's license.
Oh.
So I was all geared up to take this test, and I presented my permit, and they said it wasn't legal. And it wasn't a legal ID, and I was like, "Well, that's the only thing I got." Actually, I think at that point I still had a passport, but I didn't think to bring it with me.
Right.
I had my ID, and they were like, "This doesn't work." So I had to reschedule the test, pay for it again. I went to my state representative. He did not help me. So for those of you out there that have a permit, bring a passport to your NCLEX exam. You're not going to bring at least 2 forms of ID if you really want to take that test.
Yeah.
So that's what I did the second time. I brought both forms of ID.
I think everyone outside of New York City has a driver's license.
I know.
You don't need to have a car in New York. But that's not true. You do need a car in New York.
Oh, yeah. No, but I actually didn't drive until I was 25, so there's that. Yes, you're right. Everybody else probably has a driver's license at 15. So,
Yeah.
but for those of you in New York City, bring your passport
Yeah.
for your NCLEX exam. So then when I sat down to finally take it, I didn't really feel that prepared because of all the issues that were going on. And I just said this really simple prayer, and I said, my heart pounding out of my chest. My hands were sweating. I was sweating. I couldn't breathe. Like, this is how I sat down to take that test. Like, I was in a full-blown panic attack. Full-blown. Shaking like a leaf, right? And I sit down, and I just said, and I hadn't studied, and I was distraught. I was really distraught. I said, you know what, God? I said, if you want me to be a nurse, I will pass this test. And if you don't want me to be a nurse, I won't pass. Simple prayer. And don't you know that exam turned off at 75 questions. And for those, if you know, you know.
If you know, you know. 275 here.
Right?
Yeah.
My test turned off at, the test, for those of you that don't know, the test can go up to 275 questions.
Something like that.
Yeah.
For eternity.
So it can either go off at 75 or it can go off at 275
Or anywhere in between.
or anywhere in between. It shuts off. It's a computerized test that will just end. And you don't know when it's going to end.
And you don't know if it ended for a good reason.
Or you just failed.
Or they were like, we're done. We're
You're
done.
done.
Jeff, just go home.
You're done. You're done. You didn't even answer one correct. So you have no idea. The computer just shuts off. So mine shut off at 75 questions, and I was like, okay, God, like, we're in this together. I prayed. I did what I had to do. I showed up, shaking like a leaf, scared out of my mind for the second time, right? Because I showed up that way with my permit. And 2 days later, I paid for the early results. I don't know if that's like the same thing today, if you can pay for early results or not. And I had passed, and I was like, wow, like, God is really good, because that was all him. I was so scared. I was not prepared, and the test was hard. It was very hard. So I can't say like, oh, it was so easy. No, it wasn't easy. It was really hard. And I had a really hard time in nursing school too. It was very difficult for me.
Right.
Because I'm not like the best science person either. So definitely that's where I saw the intersection of faith and nursing, and being like really incorporating that. So that was a big moment for me.
Nice. No, that's good. So what else? Is there another time when you want to share about how God really came through for us?
Yeah, I think we had talked about this previously, but coming to Texas, I think was a big part for us of our faith and family and nursing coming together, integrating. Because I think it's been a lifelong process. Like I said, even though I've always been a person of faith, I don't think I really incorporated that into nursing until recently. It was very segmented in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. You want to talk about our faith journey to Texas?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I didn't leave New York, so I never thought of leaving New York. And in my head, I'm like, I'm not gonna go anywhere. Like I'm gonna get an apartment in Soho and call it that day. We'll raise my kids. We'll go to the Scholastic bookstore. We'll do the Tribeca Festival. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be a great life. And then COVID happened, and that really shined a light as to quality of life as a family. With small children. So what I thought I wanted, again, I was like, we need a change. And so we, being nurses, there were so many opportunities out there. I think I interviewed at different places, like places in D.C. and L.A. and Virginia. I don't know where else. So I must have interviewed so many places. And I remember that Texas was not one of those places that I was thinking. None of us were thinking Texas.
No.
But we came, right? We came and we checked it out. And we felt very taken aback. We realized that this is a unique place. Definitely not what we expected. And it surpassed our expectations in such a positive way. And I think we came back like every month after that.
Well, we went for my birthday, then we came for your birthday, and then we came for an interview.
Right.
So that's how that worked. So my birthday's in February, your birthday's in April, so that's kind of why it felt like monthly. And then we came back in June for your interview. So that's kind of the trajectory. But yeah, I think COVID really changed our perspective on raising our kids in New York, and then also our wonderful family here.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember
the whole reason we're in this beautiful podcast studio.
Yes, it was a wonderful family that came to visit in New York. I remember Rockefeller Center, and we were there, and I was like, "Hey, man, I just was there, and it's amazing. It's beautiful, because they live here." And they were like, "That's it, man. Pack your bags, let's go." And I was like, yeah. Mind you, like we're in Rockefeller Center drinking in the steakhouse, and I'm like, do they have things like this here? Am I gonna find a place like this, like Rockefeller Center in Texas? But amazing things are here, and again, we took a step in faith because, professionally speaking, we were fantastic in New York City, best careers, best opportunities. But we wanted to take a step in faith as parents, and that's where we really prayed. We prayed and prayed and prayed for God to take us to where we needed to be for our families. And since we've landed here a year and a half ago, it has been blessing after blessing after blessing. Our kids are in a fantastic space, just like we asked God. Something that we couldn't really do in New York. Mentally, physically, much better space. Our marriage is in a better space. Our faith is in a better space too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And just finding a fantastic church, finding a fantastic community, a life group, and the whole nine. So everything has grown so much. And so I think that absolutely, this was another time when God showed us that He was showing up for us.
Absolutely. We found the right realtor. We found the right home to rent, and then the right home to buy, and it really fell into place.
And even all those, it's we tell it as in you get a real estate agent, and that's what they do. That's their job. The person that we hired, unbeknownst to us, attended our church in the Bronx. What was it, 20 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know that. She was a recommendation from a friend of a friend of a friend.
Yeah.
And there's no when you're a person of faith, we don't believe in coincidences. We believe that God has ordained it, and God's really putting the people together. And so when that happened, we were like, wow, that's pretty awesome, because she's the one that found our house to rent in Texas. We didn't even see it. It was like a FaceTime.
Was all FaceTime. We didn't even see really where we live in Texas. And when we rolled up on the subdivision where we now own a home, it was just really breathtaking to us.
It was breathtaking
because
it was.
I had seen it I kept looking at it on Google Maps, and I was like, wow, look at this.
But it's different.
It's totally different in person. So for those of you considering moving away, this is one of the words that actually my brother had given me, because he's a pastor, and he was like, you have to go and see. Yeah. Right? Just like Abraham went to the promised land. Not Abraham. No, he sent the spies out to the promised land to go and see it. So you have to go and see it, because it's totally different. I know nowadays we can look on YouTube, and we did that. We looked on YouTube. We looked on Google Maps. We looked at all the angles, but there's nothing like going in person and seeing it for yourself. And the same thing with my work here is, it's fairly far from where we live, and now I'm always scared to say this. I'm like, I'll never do. No, because all the things I said I would never do, I had to do. It was like God was saying, no, you must do that. I was like, I never go back and live in the Bronx. I went back and lived in the Bronx for 7 years. I was like, I will never drive more than an hour for work. And now I drive an hour for work. But I think it's good to really also that God can show you your own strength.
Yeah.
Right, and His strength in you to do His will, which definitely is happening in my current role right now. But it wouldn't be without Him.
No, and
it's really amazing, because I never had driven that much for work, and now I do that. But now I'm believing for a job closer. But I am grateful for the experience, because now it's not they're set for those of us set in our ways, right? We're meant to change, evolve, grow,
right.
Which I think is analogous to a career that is fulfilling, right? You want to continually change, you want to grow, because that's what makes life worth living. That's what makes a marriage, right? Is that we continually grow together,
for sure.
But we're not the same people. So I just want to encourage you too out there, is you got to break it up. You gotta break out of your shell. You gotta break out what's comfortable for you, because you never know what's out there. It could be really awesome and exciting, and definitely scary. There was no guarantees along the way. It wasn't like we were guaranteed where we live, what we drive,
where we work.
There was no guarantees. There was no reassurance, but the reassurance was in Him, is that He has taken care of us. And He'll continue to do that, right?
Yeah.
And He is going to provide. He provided the right family, the right cousins, the right people here.
Yeah.
And the right people here for our kids, which was the most important thing to us as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we decided on this episode today, to be honest with you, on the topic because he showed up for us again this morning. And we'll close up on the episode on this, but just to share, my mother, we had decided last year that we were going to send my mother to Europe to stay in Portugal for a month. And so we did that. My mother's lifelong dream has been to go there, and she turned a milestone birthday during COVID. We weren't unable to celebrate, so this year we decided, hey, let's just why not?
She's always been there for us throughout our career,
Yeah.
really, and supporting
Our marriage, our parenthood.
Two working parents. It does take a village, and she has been that village to us, definitely.
And so she had a great time. However, yesterday morning at 6 a.m, she calls me crying. 73-year-old woman talking about she lost her passport. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know how she's going to get back. Really distraught, really distressed. Not someone that can just Google things and figure things out. Like, different generation and different culture. So, again, I'm being here and she's over there. I'm unable to really help her. And at one point yesterday, we started praying. And we said, Elisa prayed that, Lord, just may the cabbie return the bag with her passport. And just for perspective, she went from a city that's 2 hours away from the airport. So she took a cab, an Uber, for like 150 euros one way, because that's how she got to the airport. And when she got there is when she found out she no longer has it. And we were just, we're all worried. And, she had already figured out how to get, then she had to go to a 15-hour away trip to Lisbon because that's where the American Embassy is for her to get a brand new passport. However, this morning, the cabbie reached out to her and said, hey, I have your stuff, and I'm happy to return it. I can drive back 2 hours. I'll charge you for the fee for the ride, but I can drive back to you. And sure enough, he returned everything, all her possessions, her jewelry, her cash, her wallets, her passport. And so as we speak right now, she's on a flight back to New York. So, she calls me up from the airport, and she's definitely not crying, much better. And so she shares, she's like, hey, so this is what happened. And that's exactly what we prayed for. And I was just in awe, to witness a miracle, because it's a different country. She doesn't speak Portuguese. And, it was incredible. So that's why we decided to share these pivotal moments in our lives where faith interacts with our family, and sometimes in nursing as well, we thought it would be a good way to kind of like interject, one of the scopes of this podcast that we decided to take on. But
I think that's the faith is a lens that we view our lives in. So it definitely is the way that we view things. So we really wanted to tell these stories because we overcome by listening to this, right? So that's our main focus, is to help others also in these situations. To if you don't have the faith, sometimes you can be like, well, if he did it for them, he can do it for me too. So it was just a word of encouragement. And it's like, sometimes we wait for the perfect circumstances to do something like, well, I don't have the money, or, if my husband was, also a Christian, I would do this, or
I don't have the time.
Right.
Or if my kids were older, or if my kids were younger.
Right.
Or if my business was doing better.
Or if I was in shape, I would do this. There's never a right time.
Right.
And you kind of just have to jump into things by faith. And that's a really important part of finding like wholeness, And that's, I think, the point of our podcast too, is just to really find that, right? And like the way that we want to talk is really from a sincere place. So you definitely need to know that about us. Is that
yes,
this is the lens that we view career. This is the lens that we view all the things in our lives.
for sure. It's the primary way. And, and hasn't failed us, and even when I wasn't in the faith, it hasn't failed me. And I think that's what the beauty part of it all is, But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and we look forward to meeting with you again next week, where we will be discussing another wonderful topic. But in the meantime, please, if you enjoy the episode and you enjoy our conversations, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button.
And we'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next time. Thank you.